Welcome back, listeners. Today I have a badass guest for you guys, Caleb Christopher, who is an expert on creative finance. We just spoke a little bit prior to, and a lot of us in the commercial world have not done a lot of creative things. We throw a lot of deals by the wayside because they don't work or they don't pencil out. And I'm hoping that my conversation today with Caleb will enlighten everybody and also myself into structuring a deal that works for everybody. So, Caleb, thank you for joining us today. If you could, please give us a synopsis, a background on who you are, what you're doing now, and how that relates to real estate.
Sure. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I grew up with residential construction, so I was a rehab team guy. And from there, I ended up working in a prison for 5.5 years, learning physical security and risk management. Then I moved on to IT and then cybersecurity. So I've got real estate and then risk management. And now I've started a couple of companies in real estate. I own a consulting firm that helps do creative deals, mostly residential. I own a title company in Colorado and a company that specifically fixes the due on sale clause on some of those residential transactions. So I'm doubling down there, and a capital companies in the near future for me as well.
Very, very cool. Okay, so that's a pretty much like a 180 going from a corrections facility to cybersecurity and then now owning some real estate companies, right? So let's focus on the creative financing side because I'm pretty sure everybody listening is itching to learn, myself included. What have you done creatively in the real estate realm? Let's start with the residential side and we'll see how that transitions over to commercial if it fits.
That's
So
fair.
in the residential side, what have you done creatively? And what does creative financing really, really mean?
Let's start with a definition. That's a great start. So creative finance for me is when you don't use new institutional funds to accomplish a real estate transaction. That's in the real world of real estate. Now, I teach weekly and monthly at a couple of different mentorships as a guest speaker. I don't want to be a mentor. I don't want to be a guru. I love doing the stuff. I'm an operator. I'm a thinker. I'm the guy who in the mentorships was like, yeah, but why are we doing it this way? And they knew the what, but they never knew the why. And I'm like, I got to figure out the why. I can't not do that. So I'm on a mission to make real estate creative real estate safe, legal, and ethical. Hence, I built the companies that weren't there for me when I started. So as I do this, and my concern before the show was I'm mostly focused on residential, so I want to make sure we're aligned here. But it became pretty quickly apparent that creative strategies do apply to commercial deals and that this would be valuable content for your audience here. So the creative deals I've done well, how do I put this? I structure multiple deals a week for other people because I own a consulting firm. And I've got 4 properties myself right now. I sold one off recently. I've got a 0% seller finance in Georgia. The way we structured that, I told the lady, my favorite thing about creative finance, by the way, is a lot of times I can actually help somebody else by bringing a creative solution. Like you said in the intro, sometimes things just don't pencil out and the deal falls apart. Well, what if the deal didn't have to fall apart? If you offer the terms like, here's what would make it a deal for me, can that work for you? That's the beginning of all the conversations where I'm like, hey, seller, nobody's buying your property. I'm not going to buy it at that price either. But what's the deal? Why is it that high? She says, well, I've got too much money into it. I can't sell it for any less. Gotcha. You're priced at the top end of the market. I'm not convinced it's actually worth that much. How about this? And so I told her maximum $30,000 at close, period, end of story, take closing costs out of it. Right? I'm not bringing a dime more. So whatever. And then I'll pay you $500 a month until I put a tenant in there because I think it needs a little bit more work. And 0% finance. And so she got her price. I got my terms. I have a house that now, it's a break-even property, but it's all principal pay down. So I'm building equity pretty quick. That's a creative deal. You can do anything like that. That's just one of several. I took over a mortgage where the sellers paid me $200 a month to take over their house in Colorado. They did that for a year and a half.
So it sounds like when you're in communication with the seller, you are asking questions. You're asking questions to figure out what they are realistically wanting. And in this scenario, the seller really wanted their price. But there are different levers that you can pull in order to get a deal made, like you mentioned, right? I'll pay you X amount of dollars every month. And that was $30,000 that you paid at closing. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
So it's just a matter of figuring out all the different variables within the deal in order to make it work.
That's right.
So if we go into, so in commercial, and I deal with typically non-residential, you're looking at strip malls, you're looking at warehouses, flex space, office space, executive offices, etc., right? I can see this working very well with mom and pop operators, mom and pop owners versus like an institutional or a more savvy, sophisticated owner, landlord, seller, etc. Do you agree or no?
Okay, you can get more creative terms and more favorable terms from mom and pops because they just need the thing to happen. They need the deal to happen typically. With the more sophisticated investors, they understand seller finance at least, if not other strategies. They just won't give you as good of terms.
See.
What I find is typically when the dollar amount's really high, it's harder to move large amounts of new money in some cases when the deal doesn't. I mean, it's the deal, right? The deal doesn't justify moving that much money or going through all the effort to acquire that much funds to get this deal done. So how about we use the funds that are already deployed into the deal? I'll bring some fresh cash to you. And then, so when it's the mom and pop, it goes back to my Georgia deal, just like the house. I'm only going to pay you $500 a month until I put a tenant in there. After that, I'll bump the payment up to here. Well, if you're looking at a strip mall, hey, this needs revitalization. So help me help you. I'll take the property. I'll transform it. I'll put tenants in. I'll get this all figured out. But I want my payments here until I get it tenanted. It'll never go back down to level one, right? But I need you to help me get started so I can help you by getting the deal.
Gotcha. So I want to transition over to like the different tools that are available in creative finance. A lot of the listeners, I'm sure they know what the seller financing is, where the owner carries a note. But then there are other tools like a sub two, which is like an assumable note. We've done assumable notes before. And then there's also wraps. Could you first let the audience know what subject to is and what wraps are, and then elaborate on the additional available tools that are out there to get creative on structuring deals?
Yeah, and before I forget, because I will forget this, wraps are just a bad idea with commercial deals. Commercial financing, don't do that, okay? And we can ask why in a minute. So sub 2 definition is I'm going to buy your property and I'm going to take over your payments. You give me the deed, I make your payments. Your loan stays in place, your credit is still tied to that. If I don't make payments, it goes on your credit. A foreclosure can go against you as well. And there's also something called a due on sale clause, which is in even residential, but also commercial. Now, there are remedies on the residential side. There are generally not remedies. If you get caught, they can accelerate the loan, and there's nothing you can do about it unless you're very convincing and they say, yeah, sure, go ahead. So also assumption versus sub 2, they're not the same. You could call sub 2 an informal assumption. Basically, I'm not asking permission. I'll ask for forgiveness if they find out. You have a duty, on the front end of a transaction, when you're getting financing, you have a duty to provide the information they request or that you understand that they would reasonably want. So that's how you avoid fraud on the front end. After that, you don't have a duty to inform them. You can breach the contract because the contract says, if you breach, this is what we can do. It becomes a civil matter, not a legal matter. And so that's the nature of sub 2 is we're working in, I don't even think it's very gray. You can breach a contract. It's on the other party to either notice and or care and do something about it. And so that's the whole world I live in with creative finance real estate is I'm helping homeowners breach their mortgages because it's what's convenient for them. They can't afford to make the payments anymore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's an investor willing to bring the cash to reinstate a mortgage that's overdue or something like that, because it also saves the seller's credit and maybe give the seller some cash and keep that loan in good standing because the investor is buying that 3% interest rate or that 5% interest rate. So I got 2 out of 3 there. You can only ask me 2 questions at a time.
So wraps, you said, were a bad idea.
Yeah, because of the due on sale clause and there's no recovery on a commercial deal, don't wrap. It would be better to, typically people will get a commercial deal, they'll take a loan in their entity name. Okay, well, how about you sell me the interest in your entity rather than the title to the property? That's more disguised. It's not a public record transfer in general. And so you're doing the same thing as in a sub 2, but there's also additional new risks when you take over a company. If you bought my company, you bought all the actions I've performed in the past as well, right? That's a stock sale as opposed to an asset sale. So if you're taking over the ownership of the same company and the company never changes, Caleb LLC still owns 123 Main Street in the public record. That never changed. But the member has become you. That's a stock sale. If I have done something that causes liability to come on the company and it shows up a year later and you bought it halfway between then and now, you're the one carrying that risk. That's the difficulty of the stock sale.
But so you are touching on another tool that we can use in creative financing, which is essentially stock shares, sharing some interest within an LLC that owns the property, right?
Some or all, yeah, you can just buy out my interest, some or all of it. And that's a way of seller financing or even cash buying a property without changing title, which reduces transfer taxes. Like there's a lot of side benefits to that as well.
And that reminds me of the drop and swap or the entity transfers that people do to avoid the hike in property taxes. And that we do that a lot in the commercial side.
Yeah.
Now, aside from those couple of things that you've mentioned there, what are some other tools that people have used or you have used in the creative financing realm?
I did a contract for deed on a property, and a contract for deed is a contract for the deed, right? It's basically, here's seller finance. I'll give you full control of the property, but I'm not giving you the deed until you finish paying this whole thing off. We did that on a mobile home park, or a tiny home park with some other real estate attached. So I generally work in real estate, but it was operating as a business because it was a tiny home rental park. It had an SBA loan. It had personal guarantees on the part of the seller. That loan was not canceled or released because it had some pretty favorable terms that you couldn't get anymore. And so the seller wanted to sell at this price. We're like, it doesn't produce the income for that, but the overall value of the properties is there. So we could pay that price if we got to take over your loan terms, because they had like COVID relief interest rate or something crazy. Like literally, it's not a deal if I have to bring new financing because I can't get rates that would make it appealing. And so that's what we did. Was so what happens there is you transfer, you record the contract for deed or a notice of it, which grants me control of the property. I can generate the income and keep it, and it's all for my benefit. Legal title remains with you. So possession is mine, or equitable title is mine. Legal title is yours. And when you're done, or when I'm done paying you off, then you give me the full deed. That's also treated very similar to ownership for the sake of getting a refinance. So once I take my equitable title through the contract for deed, my ownership starts for seasoning periods. And so if you're looking for a refi, sometimes that's a great tool to just, hey, let me take control of the property. I'll make you payments, or I'll make payments to your loan, etc. But then I'll refinance, because sometimes refinance is more favorable terms than new financing.
Certainly. In an interest rate declining environment, it definitely helps, right? Are there any other tools that you have in your back pocket? Any other cool methods that you've used in the past?
A lot of them are just shorter term. Mostly it's residential stuff. Like sometimes like a 7% interest rate on a property is not very attractive residentially to turn it into a rental. But if you're going to flip a property, it's cheaper for me to just take over your payments and pay you in full in 3-4 months when I get the thing finished, flipped, and sold. So sometimes it's easier, just give me the deed, I'll make your payments. I'm oversimplifying, you guys. There's a lot of paperwork involved. But give me the deed, I'll spend my cash to fix it up, I'll sell it to a new buyer. That will pay off your mortgage, that'll pay off you, and I'll take my profits.
Okay. So let's talk about a deal that you've done in the past. Could be residential, could be commercial, what have you. But that was probably the most difficult deal that you've done, and you've navigated all the intricacies of it in order to get the deal done.
Anytime partners are involved, every single one of them is the most difficult deal I've ever done.
Can you give us an example?
I mostly work on other people's deals as a consultant, and the most convoluted one was where I don't like hiring friends. I don't like partnering with people. One person was a realtor, one person was a construction guy, one is like a city permits guy, other was a capital partner. The capital partner ended up knowing more about getting permits done than the permits guy. So people aren't fulfilling their roles. They're partnering into a deal, not actually necessarily being experts. The thing is, when you partner with somebody, and especially because they're co-equity owners or JV partners, or they're in the same LLC, whatever arrangement you've made, you can't fire a partner. Let me simplify. If I was going to get a property with one other partner, I would rather hire a property manager, even if my guy owns a property management business. The relationship is typically worth more than saving some dollars. And besides, why wouldn't I pay him full rate? Why do I have to take a discount from my friend? If he owns a business, let me pay him. So I would just rather not. I'd rather hire somebody that I can fire than to partner with somebody I can't, even if that's in their wheelhouse. Unless it's something simple like, hey, they're an agent and they'll take a 1% fee instead of a 3%, but we're not expecting any special duties of them. We're just leveraging their license or their access. That's fine. But when it's like ongoing duties, not a fan. So the convoluted scenario was just that. 4 different parties with different roles, and somebody had borrowed money. They were using borrowed money to be a private capital partner because of the promises made and the qualifications of the people in the deal. And nothing happened for too long. And then somebody ran off with some of the money. It's just, that's partnerships.
Definitely. You got to choose. You got to choose the right partners, and you got to have an alignment of interest from the get-go. And I know things change down the road, but the better you are protected from the get-go, the better you're going to end up being, right? I want to touch a little bit back on the due on sale stuff. You mentioned you created a company called DOS Guard. Is that right?
DOS Guard, yeah.
DOS Guard. Okay. So every investor pretty much fears the due on sale clause, right?
Yeah.
And it's a, like you mentioned, it's a breach of contract. So how does DOS Guard, how does that product actually work? And could you elaborate on a scenario where you've helped someone or an investor or yourself,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
like get out of that due on sale clause?
So you can think of insurance, but I will never call it insurance. Conceptually, you're paying some money to reduce risk. If that's what insurance is, then great. I don't want to come under regulation. Technically, it is risk reduction and a prepaid remediation fee with a money back guarantee. So I can't prevent due on sale from happening. I've seen and touched a lot of things, right? I run 30 to 50 creative finance deals every month. We've done thousands at this point. We've had due on sale called. We've helped plenty of people resolve that. We're going up on 36 times now that we've fixed due on sale. Fingers crossed we haven't failed yet on these residential loans. I've turned somebody down for commercial due on sale remediation. I gave them some advice and said, if this doesn't work, there's nothing else I can do. So that's how you preserve your record, folks. Preserve your win record. But the DOS Guard policy is like, if at closing, if you want this protection, it's some risk reduction. So we'll do some training, some extra training with the seller whose credit's on the line. And if they call the bank, they can trigger the due on sale clause by saying the wrong thing. So we coach them into what to say and how to not say anything and just have the bank call you. And if the due on sale clause does get called and the loan gets accelerated, we will fix it. That can take one of 10 or 15 different paths, right? It depends on, was this a transaction that you bought as your primary residence? Did you buy it as a rental? Did somebody acquire it and then assign it to you? And now you've done a wraparound mortgage, sold it to somebody else. So the title transferred twice. And now there's 3 or 4 interested parties that we have to deal with. Do you have a long-term plan with this? What's your short-term plan with it? What state is it in? What type of loan is it? All these things factor into what's the best path given your situation to resolve due on sale.
So I want to transition over to the entrepreneurship side of it, the business side of all your businesses, operations, scaling, etc. You mentioned 3 businesses. You got a title company, you got the DOS Guard, the due on sale guard, and you're also a consultant. So did all of these 3 companies start at the same time? Did they kind of one after the other, or what was the origins of these 3 businesses?
The first one was it's called Creative TC, and that's Creative Transaction Consulting. And that was after I did my first couple of sub 2 deals, and I thought there were going to be experts at title companies helping us make sure this was right. No, they just closed the deal. You can just go do stuff, put it on paper, and they'll close it. What? So I'm like, there's too much room for people to do each other dirty, whether they know it or not, like intentionally or unintentionally. The title companies aren't being a guide, so I was the guy who needed to know the why behind the what. And so I built what wasn't there for me. That was company number 1. Scaled that to, it's difficult to scale, by the way, because I have to hire really smart people and train them this much information so that they can do this deal and this deal and this deal. And they're all different information requirements on the spectrum of what they have to know. So I have fantastic people. but it's hard to grow that. And that's a little over 3.5 years old now. The DOS Guard was kind of a bolt on. People kept asking for due on sale insurance, and I'm like, let me fix a couple and I'll figure out if I can productize it for you. So it's kind of a bolt on. Same people work both companies, but they're different risk models. So different LLCs. And then the title company's been on my dream list for 2 years out of the 3.5, probably longer than that. I just needed to get the other one mature enough and hand it off to internal management before I could dedicate my time full time to the title company, which is where I'm at right now. On the horizon, not a title company, but a capital company and a training company. So I'll have 4 or 5 by the time I'm done. Maybe I'll never finish.
A capital company meaning raising capital. Is that correct?
Although I
Lending.
could add a capital raising arm that helps people raise capital for their deals.
And what was
Because I did
the
just raise $320,000 for my title company.
fantastic?
Equity.
So a capital company, and then you mentioned what was the last company,
Training company.
and what does that look like?
I like teaching, and there's plenty of opportunity to establish authority. Once I own more of these pieces in the same vertical, it's like, all right, well, I can jump straight to the top of the line when it comes to authority if I show up on a bunch of podcasts, and if I produce mini courses, and if I start producing continuing education courses for real estate agents and title agents and all the other people. It's like, why not just use his other companies? If you had to go take his course to keep your license, just go use his title company. Just go get a loan from his people, you know? So that's the plan.
Okay. Now, you mentioned in the creative TC company as well as the DOSGuard company, you kind of have the same employees that are in there, right? What does your team look like now?
14 people, 4 in the US, the rest are in South Africa, so 10.
Wow. Okay. How did you decide South Africa to be the place to remotely outsource the work?
A little bit of overlapping circumstances at one time. Somebody had just come back from travel, mentioned they found some really great people there, good hard workers. And then I had just finished a flip where my now best friend was working for me and he was South African. I was like, oh yeah, he's got a hustle culture. He talked about the other people and I'm like, they speak clean English. I don't have to worry about a Philippine accent. It's not night shift. I personally have a problem when my people have to be assertive and active chasing stuff down, and that's not what I got when I hired VAs from the Philippines. It's also night shift, so it's a different personality that works night shift than works daytime. It just is. I've worked both shifts myself when I worked at the prison. So I wanted day shifters. I wanted minimal accent I also worked at a British soccer company, and part of their business model, the soft sell was, hey, we bring in British athletes during the US summer and the moms and dads melt for the accent. Period. End of story. We get a third of our sales because the accent sells it. They love it. Well, the South Africans have a beautiful accent as well, and each one of them is customer facing, and so my customers love it.
And do you hire them on like Upwork or how does that
No,
work?
I recruit directly. So I go to LinkedIn and Indeed and a couple of other recruiting platforms. I'm writing job descriptions. As the founder, I need to set clarity on what is this role, what's the vision for it, who does it report to, etc. And so, in fact, I had an epiphany over the weekend that for the title company, because the title company is relatively new and we're recruiting for a few roles, just a paper job description. And like, as the founder, if I'm looking for key employees, I darn right well better get on camera and say, hey, I'm Caleb. I founded the company. We just raised some capital. I'm so excited to have you looking at this job opportunity. Here's what it is. Here's what I expect of you. Here's what the team looks like. Here's my vision. If that vision aligns with you, please apply. And if you don't make it, please persist because I'm looking for you, the right person. Like, why would I not do that for every single job post? As the founder, I have no better use of my time than to find the right people. So the South African thing, it came about. I liked it. A lot of hustle culture there. Hard workers, and I didn't want to diversify too many different national cultures at the same time. So having everybody in the same time zones simplifies things a lot.
When you're hiring these VAs or individuals, you mentioned showing them your vision. Now, what core values do you have so remotely?
We recruit them, and I take pride in recruiting people. We pay them a salary. I'm not going through a third party. They're not my assistants. They're my employees. And so we recruit and train them directly to be, and we're proud of each one of them and they're proud to be there. So it's not, I just want to separate myself from the concept of Caleb hires VAs. No, I don't.
Got it. Got it. So you mentioned that you give them your vision, and I'm sure you give them your core values. What else do you provide to them, or what is in your hiring packet that makes them that they have to hit in order to be hired by you?
There's a couple of tests. Enough that when you apply, we have filters that will automatically detect if you have followed instructions, right? So I have to work with adults. I'm not going to give you daily tasks and tell you what to do the whole time. I'm going to give you outcomes and set you to work. I need to find the right person, hire them, and then get out of their way. Set the vision, let them do the work, and check in and realign, and just continuously realign and give them feedback on, was this good or bad? This is what I would tweak about that. I had somebody run a whole ad campaign that went to a dead page. Okay, well, lesson learned. I said, hey, I found this problem. Wondered why we had nobody show up to this webinar. Well, we spent a whole bunch of ad money on it, and it pointed to a dead link. And I'm like, well, this is one of the core values, attention to detail. Lesson learned. We'll get over it. But let's not make that mistake ever again. And it's one of those things, like, I expect mistakes to happen, but are we aligned with the vision? Are we practicing things the right way? Are we learning lessons as we go? So I want to hire adults, not children.
And that comes, so how do you end up, it sounds like you have like KPIs for each and every one of your employees. So how do you
No, I'm not
decide?
that mature.
No, not that
So
mature?
the benefit of hiring great people is you don't have to have great systems. If you're hiring not great people, you have to have a lot of accountability systems to measure work inputs. I'm more measuring outputs than I am measuring inputs. I think a lot of KPIs measure inputs. They measure the results, but it's like, how many calls did you make today? That's more like input measuring. Because we're mostly a consulting firm at company number one, it's really hard to quantify activity toward goals. We measure the finished product, and then we look back at it as a project and say, what contributed to the success or failure of this, and let's learn for next time. And that's why I can't hire task-based workers. I hire outcome-based workers.
Have you ever had to fire anybody?
Tons. Yeah, let me see if I can find out my sheet, but we also do a couple of different personality tests on the front end so that we can see which personalities and profiles, etc., stay with us, which do we love, which don't like us as much, which ones love us, which ones are terminated involuntarily, which ones are still employed, which ones leave voluntary versus involuntary. And we cross-reference that, and I've got like 56 people on that spreadsheet right now over the last 3.5 years. So it's with that much data, it's not a ton, but for a small business, that's a good amount. I've spent a lot of money experimenting on employees, but we've got enough trends where I'm like, I'm never hiring this character trait again. This, profile, statistically, it just isn't going to work, and I don't have the money to be running an experiment for somebody to be an exception.
That makes sense. Could you give the audience an example of an outcome-based hire or an outcome-based task?
Sure. So we actually produce a checklist of things that you need to do, but I'm expecting you to update the checklist based on the dynamics of a situation. So if it is to record a memorandum of a purchase contract on public record, there's a process, or a procedure, actually. There's a procedure for doing that, but one of our core values includes resourcefulness, because stuff happens. If you're asking me, hey, this didn't get recorded, I don't understand why. Not the right mindset. If you're coming to me and say, hey, this didn't get recorded, it got rejected, I called the county recorder's office and asked them, and they said we need A, B, and C. But then I researched it, and I don't think we do need that. This is my recommended course of action. Yay or nay? That's the person I'm looking for. That's the difference between a task-oriented person and an outcomes-oriented person. The end result is this must be recorded on the public record. I ran into a problem. Okay, go figure it out and come back with a solution. If it's something where it's like, which solution is best, or, hey, this might actually pose a risk to the company, but I think this will work, that's an escalation conversation.
Love that. In your business right now, I know you don't do much systems, right? Because you have great people. But is there a system that you have right now that is instrumental to the business? Or
Yeah,
all three businesses?
our core one at the consulting firm is Bitrix 24. It's like any other CRM in general, because we have pipelines, right? A pipeline with stages. And so when somebody says, actually, one of my favorite products is that if you get a seller finance or a sub-2 verbal agreement with a seller and you're like, now what? Well, I've got a full-time dedicated employee for that. You drop a $200, drop the information on the website, and same day you're in an appointment with us and we crank out a contract. Stages in my pipeline. When you finish that, if it gets signed and you want to work with us to actually run the transaction for you, it drops into pipeline number 2. Stage. We got to collect our deposit. Just capturing all of our deals in one place, seeing how many are open or in this stage or this stage, from a management perspective, that has been fantastic. And it allows transferability between employees. So I'm not saying that I'm not a systems guy. It's just that it has been very difficult for me to pull our process into measurable KPIs that actually mean something. We can just collect data, but it's not like I can rub somebody's nose in, hey, your number's low in this category, because that may not actually affect the actual outcome. So Bittrex 24 is what I use. By comparison, a lot of people use Go High Level. Guess what? I use that too. I use that for sales, not for order fulfillment. Order fulfillment, the Bittrex deal allows me to attach multiple people. So John Smith might be a buyer on 123 Main Street, but also could be selling 456 South Street. So I need a CRM that allows him to be attached to 2 deals at the same time as the primary or a secondary. I've got attorneys, cousins, moms, everybody attached to a transaction. So I need to be able to communicate with all of them from within our little deal card, and Bittrex accommodates that for order fulfillment.
And
But
Go High Level doesn't do.
no, it's how do I put that? Go High Level is great. I'm not downplaying it. I'm just saying it's contact centric instead of deal centric, and that's the difference.
I agree. Yeah. Well, Caleb, I got 1 or 2 questions left for you. If you could leave one piece of advice for your successor, your heir, or the audience that would ensure their success in business and, let's say, life as well, what would that be?
Get started sooner. And by that, I mean, don't overthink it. You don't have to have it perfect on paper before you get started in real life. Make mistakes sooner so that you can make fixes sooner.
Love that. And fail forward, right? And how can the audience add value to you?
I'm going to say this. I'm the anti-guru. I will show you the bad news. The months where my rental portfolio loses money because I was too busy to get tenants in the properties. So visit calebchristopher.io. Grab my boardroom newsletter. I show my real financials between the business and the real estate portfolio, and some critical lessons learned from the month, whether they're good or bad lessons. And that includes my contact info if anybody wants to reach out. And an occasional deal shows up there if somebody wants to invest.
And aside from those things that you've mentioned there, are there any other social media handles or YouTube channels or anything like that you want to let the audience get a hold of you with?
Sure. I mean, you can find everything from that calebchristopher.io, but on Instagram, I am at @FCalebChristopher. Legal first name's Frederick, so @FCalebChristopher.
Awesome, Caleb. Well, I had a blast today. I learned a lot. I appreciate your time. Hopefully we can get you back on in the near future to talk about anything other, any other creative structures that you've developed or learned in the future.
Well, I own a title company in Colorado, so bring me your deals in Colorado. How about that?
Love it. Love it. Appreciate your time, brother.
See ya.